Hey guys, welcome to the Bill Barnwell Show. I am Bill Barnwell, and today I was really excited about this show. We're going to talk about some nerdy free agent signings, some guys who might exceed expectations with our friend Nate Tice from Yahoo. But Nate, before our podcast started, we were blessed. Les Snead, Brett Veach did us a solid, got us a trade that, by the way, of course, was in my list of potential trades that would make sense for both sides last month. Although the Rams did pay a little bit more than I expected. We have Trent McDuffie, the star cornerback for the Kansas City Chiefs, going to the Los Angeles Rams for 4 picks, including a first rounder, their later first rounder, which I think is 29 in this year's draft, and a third rounder next year as well. Nate, early thoughts on a really big trade to me. One of the better cornerbacks in football moving here before free agency opens.
One of the better cornerbacks and a guy with the inside and outside versatility and a great schematic fit for the Rams. So I actually totally understand, and doing, because we're in the thick of draft season as well, because I'm a few psychopaths that decided to cover the draft and free agency at the same time. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. It's more just like I should have planned this better. Previewing free agency while doing a top 50 big board at the same time. But in April, I will appreciate it because I feel a lot better about these teams and how I feel about the teams. But no, as I was doing mock drafts, kind of started to realize, I think everyone's their first glance at the Rams roster is corner. Because they've kind of made some hay with some no-name corners, some day 3 guys, some retreads. They've had a couple different. They traded for Roger McCreary. It was a trade, right? Trade or cut? Yeah, it was a trade. In the middle of the season, I couldn't remember if it was a cut or a trade. Titans, you never know with the Titans. And also just. They like this, just this dynamic play. McDuffie's one of the better slot defenders in the entire NFL. Kind of gotten washed away in the last couple of years as the Chiefs have kind of been out of sight, out of mind. We see other guys crop up, and McDuffie's played on the outside, and a very valid corner on the outside as well. And a lot of zone stuff and aggressive scheme under Spags, all funky blitzes, using him as a blitzer or using him in trap coverages or something of that poach coverages. Not poach, but trap. I'll call it trap. But that's what the Rams do under Chris Shula. So I love that fit just even schematically. It's not just, a corner, trade first rounder for him. It's actually even more to it. So it makes a lot of sense for the Rams. It's also doing mock drafts. I kind of started to realize, they might draft a corner. Weird range there with that second first round pick. And that's actually doing mock drafts in this draft class. And I think many people said it. There's not a ton of what they call for true first round talents or blue chip talents. I would say I'm in that 8 to 10 range, maybe 9 to 11 range as I do it right now. So maybe there's a lot of muck in the middle. And I think maybe the Rams realized, okay, that's not exactly what we need. Are we really going to double dip with 2 more rookies? And we're kind of pushing for a Super Bowl run like this. You got to feel like this is Stafford's last hurrah. So this is the last push. So it made sense that second first rounder that they had would be tradable for a vet. And this is Les Snead we're talking about, Sean McVay we're talking about. They're going to be aggressive with it. So it makes all the sense in the world. And I thought I was on to something last week, and I was like, hey, that second first round pick's going to be live for the Rams in a trade. And it was just like, everyone's been reporting that, Nate. You're not the first person to realize that. I was like, dang it. I thought I was on to something. Pepe Sylvia. I figured it out. But no, and being McDuffie, I totally understand this for the Rams. Now, the Chiefs is a much longer conversation, but I think that was my first instinct. For the Rams, who are more the contender team here, the Chiefs are kind of in a regroup year, it feels like. This makes a lot of sense for where they're at, the window that they're in, and it's a good player that I think is worth trading a late first round pick for as well.
I agree. And for the Rams, they spend very little cash right now on their defense. They have so many young players. Of course, that defensive line is all guys on rookie deals. They're going to get paid in the years to come. There's no doubting that they're going to keep the majority of those guys. But cornerback has been a place, like you said, where they have been dumpster diving, might be a little harsh, but they've been certainly willing to try some stuff out. Akilla Witherspoon has played for the minimum. He's played a bunch of snaps for them. He was hurt last year, but the year before, and in 23 played a bunch of snaps for them at cornerback. They signed Darius Williams in free agency. That move doesn't really work out. He was a healthy scratch for chunks of last year. Emmanuel Forbes, they sort of buy really low. He was a waiver wire acquisition, but ended up being a guy who played meaningful snaps for them for most of last season. And I think will probably still start for them in 2026. But they have Quentin Lake in the slot, and McDuffie, I think like the best usage of him, the way you're going to get the most value out of him is being a hybrid player where he can move inside, he can move around. So I wonder what this means for Quentin Lake, how that defense sort of realigns with McDuffie. But in terms of the fit for what the Rams need right now, getting a quarterback who can be an above average, high end player immediately obviously makes sense for where they are. They can afford to sign him to an extension. I assume that's coming probably in the days to come here. He's now eligible for a deal. It seemed like a really logical fit
Yeah.
from the Rams' perspective. And like you said, I know people love saying F them picks, and it's a fun slogan. The Rams do value picks. The picks they
Yeah.
just don't value are the bottom quarter of the first round. They're very
Makes
aggressive
sense.
moving those picks. That has not been the worst thing in the world for them over the course of the Les Snead era. But the Chiefs, a trade where I was willing to countenance this deal and sort of see why it might make sense for the Chiefs given their history, because Brett Veach has been very aggressive, moving on from very good cornerbacks at the end of their deals. They traded Marcus Peters to these very same Rams after 3 years. They traded L'Jarius Sneed after franchising him to Tennessee. And now Trent McDuffie, at the end of his rookie deal, goes to the Rams. So talk about the fit for the Chiefs on the current roster, the 26 roster in a second. But I just first want to ask you, Nate, why do you think the Chiefs are so willing and so comfortable with letting some of these standout cornerbacks go as they're entering the prime of their careers?
The McDuffie one's different for me than Snead. Like Snead, as he was getting
Okay.
up there in years and everything, and I think I think this is a little. I will say at my first kind of glance at this, and maybe as I marinate on it, it'll make more sense. It's like, why are you trying to get rid of one of the few blue chip guys you have on your team?
Right.
Not just defense, just period, your team.
For sure.
I think that this roster is a lot like that's why there's such an interesting mock team to mock at pick 9. I know Jeremiah Love is the most common one, which I would in a fancy booking sense be very giddy about, but in a real football sense, I'd be like, you guys got a lot more needs than me picking a
Yeah.
running back at 9. And so that's why it is curious to me. I will say that the counter to that is, or at least maybe their optimistic view of it, as well as Spags is really good at identifying
Mhm.
DBs, especially on day 3. And we can just maybe just like we did in our Super Bowl run, the year they beat the the Eagles
The,
the first
the
time.
Bashan, oh no,
Well,
the
but
first
sorry,
Eagles
but
win.
they kind of their defense really picked up and but they just threw a bunch of day 3 DBs. And then Spags had a lot of fun with it. Of course, 2 of those DBs were Snead and McDuffie, so that kind of helped. But all these other guys that are coming up for contracts. So, Jalen Watson was another one, a
Watson,
nice
yeah.
7th round find who actually might be a sneak. We might talk about him a little bit, but just kind of a sneaky guy that like actually is a solid starter. I consider. But for a
Yep.
7th rounder, that was a find. You had guy after guy that was just able to contribute. They're playing all these dime looks because of that. And that's actually another reason why you used to talk about Lake and McDuffie. McDuffie
Mhm.
translates as well because the Rams use a lot of dime as well.
They do.
So I think that's
Good point.
maybe their argument is that Spags can coach them up. Spags can find them. If we just throw a bunch of darts, we can build it in the aggregate. We can find Johnny Damon in the aggregate.
Yeah.
But I do, or is it Giambi? That's actually a better one.
It was
Giambi in the
Giambi,
aggregate.
yes.
Yeah, but I do think that's the optimistic view. The pessimistic view is, well, Spags is getting up there in years and he's not going to be there
It's true.
forever. So I think that's kind of like, again, you're betting on stuff that worked once that's hard to do, to hard to replicate. If everyone could do it, they would do it. And I think that's what usually you spend high picks on corners because that's the easiest way to find a significant corner, a needle moving corner. So
Mhm.
that's why I have a little issues with this with the Chiefs. Maybe they're just like, hey, this Patrick's not coming back till October or something of
Yeah.
that sort. And they're just like, hey, let's just kick the can in this year, get as much young talent as we can, just see what we got. And then really 2027 is our year and we push there. That's another view of this. But I do think it's
Mhm.
interesting, I would say, for a team that's at a crossroads, an organization that's at a crossroads to go, okay, we're going to get rid of one of our few blue chip talents that's young. And also we're going to like bring back all of our favorite coaches that we already know. Just a weird, interesting offseason going on for the Chiefs, I would say.
I mean, that cornerback room is going to be lonely because not only, to your point, is now Trent McDuffie gone, but also Jalen Watson is a free agent, and I
Yeah.
believe going to get paid a really good contract in free agency. And
Yep.
so you're now talking being down not just your top corner, but your top two quarterbacks
Yep.
from last season. I thought Noel Williams was pretty good as a rookie. They didn't seem to really trust him a ton during his rookie season, which I found kind of frustrating. I thought he played well when he was on the field. They have Christian Fulton, who they got nothing from in his first year. I think he has $5 million guaranteed in year 2 already, so he's going to be around probably, and might have no choice but to play him and hope that he can kind of get back to his Chargers form. But it does feel like for a team that is in a perennial championship window, where it's okay, we have to try to win every single year. The Mahomes thing does make sense. That idea of maybe we know Patrick Mahomes is not going to be ready, and so we should not be, selling out to try and win in 2026. And let's try to get the most value for our roster, get some young guys around in 2027. The other thing I would just say, Nate, is you look at this team and their roster construction, it's a really expensive core. I mean, Chris Jones is one of the highest paid defensive players in football. Patrick Mahomes is not making top tier quarterback money anymore, but I would assume he's going to get paid in the next 12 months and get paid a lot of money in the process. You signed Nick Bolton to come back. You signed Karlaftis to a pretty big deal. You have Humphrey, Trey Smith, two of the highest paid players at their positions in all of football. I don't know if they're going to pay Rashee Rice. I don't know if they should pay Rashee Rice, but something's going to happen there. But I mean, this is a team where it feels like they're recognizing we have to change a little bit about our roster construction. They cut Juwan Taylor earlier this week, which is going to free up $20 million in cash and cap. They can move Jalen Moore to right tackle. I assume that's what the early plan is going to be. But I sort of wonder, like, if you're the Chiefs now, you have a little bit of money to work with. You have 2 first-round picks. You have some draft capital. You're picking higher than you ever have, or not ever have, but certainly ever have in the Mahomes era.
In a while.
In a while, yeah. Where do you think Brett Veach is going? Like, what do you think the next step is for them in terms of how they build this roster?
Again, for me, this is not the draft class to have 2 first rounders in. It stinks to say that right now, but even saying that, I do think they can really bolster stuff they need. Like, to me, they need skill position speed, and not just speed, size as well.
Yep.
I think, and this is not who I would address in the first round, but I would even say they need a tight end that can play in line. That's something they've been missing since Blake Bell. They need defensive speed, but they need skill position speed. They need, I brought this up on a show I actually did with our friend Sheil Kapadia years and years, or it feels like years and years ago. But it was that the Chiefs have basically gotten since 2019, their skill position guys, or their pass catchers, I should say, receivers and tight ends, have gotten 10 pounds lighter on average, even more than that, might be 12, and they've gone 1 miles per hour slower on average for the next gen stats. So it says the other day, but smaller and slower, not the way to build a football team. Not ideal at all. So I have kind of just looked at, like, they need to add skill position speed. At pick 9, they should have their pick of the litter. If they want to go down to Love trained, they can do that. I was trying to think of a different idiom there. Monorail. Forget it, Mom. The mob is spoken. No, but I do think too is that Kenyon Sadiq is an interesting candidate to me. I know I just said they need a blocking tight end, but this is a guy that can fill that tight end spot from Kelsey, who is a free agent as well, an older guy. Then they kind of give a hometown. You had the best line, by the way. I text you this. Like, I thought that was so just apt when you're talking about the Kelsey. Like, no, they actually paid him more. It was not like a hometown discount they gave him.
No, it's a hometown premium.
Top market. Is anyone giving each other a discount here? Like, is that what this whole is supposed to be? No, there's not. But Sadiq would be an interesting name. But that's where I think their offensive line is set up to be good next year. Like, I would even say very good. I would say this could be a top 5 offensive line.
Sure.
That's why. And they've been efficient running the ball the last couple of years. They just need explosives. And that's a receiver, that's a running back, that's a tight end. So at pick 9, to me, it's offensive skill position. Like, that is just what you have to. You're not going to be able to pick this high. And there's a couple interesting names that make sense. If you want to go receiver, Cardinal Tate, of course, from Ohio State, that's a little rich to me, but I understand it in this draft class. I've always been, if you're going to pick receiver high, it better be the freaks of the world. It might be Jeremiah Smith, his teammate next year. I'm always more of a guy you build up from in, but they already have an O-line. So I'm willing to wave that way a little bit. But no, I found the stat. Yeah, they've gone 10 pounds lighter. 10 pounds lighter. And sorry. But also defensively, that's actually not a bad spot to maybe address. It's a defensive tackle area. It's a deep edge class.
Yep.
Defensively, they need more guys that can win one-on-one. George Karlaftis is a fine player. They
Yep.
extended him already. Chris Jones is getting up there in years, but they need guys that can just win outside Spags' funkiness. But again, and that's the thing, if Spags moves on in a couple of years, I know nothing about this. There's no smoke about it. I'm just saying hypothetically, well, now we definitely need guys that can win one-on-one for the next iteration of this Chiefs roster. So to me, offensive skill positions is what they have to address at 9. But from there, it's like they need starters on defense on all 3 levels: linebacker, defensive line, and DBs. And that's a decent area of the draft to pick one. And if they really want to go crazy and just go high-end offense, then that's an interesting receiver range as well. If they want to go skill position, or offense, or something of that sort. So they set themselves nicely for a nice deep breath as long as everybody's on the same page there.
Yeah, I mean, well said. And to your point, like, not only if Spags leaves, but what if the defense has to shift a bit? What if they can't be as aggressive with their blitzes, with their exotics? They don't have the dudes at quarterback. Well, the way you counter that is having dudes up front who are going to win one-on-one. So I think I don't think they're going to they're not going to turn into, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like a really conservative, like the first year Jonathan Gannon Eagles defense. But I do think they're going to be more inclined to blitz a little less, or be a little choosier about when they blitz. And because I don't know if they're going to be able to trust the quarterbacks the way they could in 23, 24, 25.
Yeah, well, I mean, and even just think how how he kind of rose to fame, I would say, is those Giants defenses. They were built up front, the NASCAR packages, all that, but that was built up front. He was always had some blitzes, but he wasn't as much of a mad scientist as he became. He had some stuff, but that wasn't kind of his rep early on. I thought more it was just, there was some aggression, but it wasn't to this extent. So that's just kind of speaking to Spags, can play different styles and do different styles. Also, their blitzing kind of dropped off last year as far as not the rate, but the effectiveness of those blitzes. Yeah, they're such a weird team to me because there's so much stuff that goes like, oh, they should regress positively here. But then you're like, oh, Mahomes' injury. Oh, look at this roster. It's like I can't get over the top with them. I love the offensive line. Of course, Mahomes, if he's out there, it's great. But they just have so many questions, that stuff that can really sway. I mean, they can go down a lot of paths this offseason now.
Yeah, and that I think is the interesting thing, is the flexibility. Like they do have a lot of ways they can go. Rams still have the first round pick from the Falcons, which will obviously they can use now to address with a higher pick, address maybe the holes in their roster. But plenty more of trades on the way here. But let's talk about free agency. That was our initial plan, Nate, before we got here. And we are not, as we mentioned before we started recording, this is not going to be the Mike Evans discussion, although there's nothing wrong with having a Mike Evans discussion. This is not going to be the Alec Pierce discussion, although very excited to have an Alec Pierce discussion. Today, we are nerding out. That is why you are here. We are digging in the crates for lower end free agents, guys who we think, or at least I think, I don't know if you're going to agree with me, but players who can exceed their contracts in the 2026 free agent class, which is hard to do. If you get hit, if you pay for a home run and you get a double, most teams are pretty good with that. I think, I don't want to pick it up because just retired, but the Drew Dalman contract, where it's like you're one of the highest paid centers in football and you're pretty good in your first year. Obviously, they didn't expect him to retire, but like no one's saying that's a that is a disaster. The bar is very high for these contracts to pay off. So you can have a guy who exceeds expectations. That is a huge hit if you could pull it off. It's happened, of course, I think with the Eagles, with Saquon and Zach Bond a couple of years ago. Seattle, I feel like they probably got more out of DeMarcus Lawrence than they could have expected.
Dolphins
heading into last year.
Brewer and Jordan Brooks, 2 for 2 there.
I have a Dolphins player on my list, but I will wait on that one. I will let you go first.
Okay. Oh man, I have so many here. So it's more like you have to rein me back on some of this. I'll start with a pet favorite of mine because I even sent this to you before the show, that any excuse I get to talk about nose tackles or some of these guys, I'm going to do. And I'm going to do with a perpetual favorite of mine who has done nothing but play good football for now at 2 different spots. That is Roy Lopez. Roy Lopez is a defensive tackle for the Lions last year, and they addressed defensive tackle in several ways. They signed Vet, they had Reader, I believe, and then they had they drafted why am I blanking on his name, from Ohio State, but they drafted him as well, and they're trying to really beef up that interior. Lopez was
Tyreek
the
Williams.
best. Thank you. Lopez was the best player of that bunch, and
Yep.
now this is two spots because he was a Cardinals scrap heap find on a defense that had a whole bunch of
He was
nothings, and
a
he
Texas
was a
player back originally.
yeah, Texans. Yep. And they cut him randomly, and then he goes to the Cardinals and plays, and he actually like turns into a decent player. And I said this last year about him. He got a 1-year deal, and I outplayed that contract last year. And if we're looking at defenses that, it's going to be a very popular discussion because of how the Seahawks and Mike McDonald won. And the focus is usually on the DBs with that, the coverages with that. You have to win up front. Just a continuation of the conversation with Spags and the Chiefs. You have to win up front. And Lopez is a true space eater that can actually create some plays for the defense, some explosives for the defense as well. And he's a guy that I just don't understand, like, why he even last year didn't get a deal. But I think this year, like, his play was so good, and I could point some stuff rate stats and everything, but he is just a guy that, like, eye test has consistently been a good player. I'm not even saying an average starter. I would say a good starter. So he's a guy that plays, you can get 20 to 30 good snaps out of on early downs. And then, and it, he's not going to get pass rushing juice, but yeah, he's a guy that might get just one of these 1-2 year deals and then just all of a sudden just outplays that easily. But I do think I just have to bring him up, and I'm throwing with a fastball with a nice nose tackle here for you. But I got some juicier, more sexier positions and picks. But I have to shout out Roy Lopez. Him and Kyrus Tonga. That's another guy, a defensive tackle that I think these guys should get more focus from teams than I think even the public consensus will kind of view that. They'll be, when you see those lists and the high headlines on your employer that shows every signing that happened on, these guys will not make the top 14 there. But I do think they are significant signings for whatever team signs them.
Yeah, Lopez is a good player. And you mentioned there's not much pass rush juice there, but he did go through Kevin Dotson for a sack of Matthew Stafford.
Yes, he did.
Earlier this year, which, I mean, it's a pretty good guard if you're going to go.
If you get 2 sacks of a nose tackle, that's a win.
Like,
yes, if you get,
sure.
That's it. If you get 4, that's amazing. Like that, it's just such a sliding scale. It's like second baseman hitting home runs. Like you're like, if you get a couple, you're happy.
If you get 40, then you start staring at Brett Boone like, what happened here, Brett?
Man,
you suddenly
he's played in my dad's golf tournament.
Oh no!
He hits the ball.
I'm not picking up Brett
500 yards. He has no idea where it's going, but it sounds like a gunshot every time he hits the ball. Yeah. But
that's what you get when you bring Nate Tice on the show. Brett Boone, Celebrity Golf Stories. Not many other guests on this show can call on that, but. I want to stick on defensive line. This is a player who's going to get paid more than Roy Lopez. I would say a considerable amount more. But I do think there's still a possibility we have not seen his best play. There's a chance that he could be a guy who continues to bloom into his late 20s as a former highly rated recruit, a formerly highly rated prospect, a former first-round pick who has played really good football over the last year plus. Nate, can you guess who I'm going to say?
I think, but who is it?
It's Kayvon Chason of the New
England Chason, right? Yes, okay, that's who I thought.
Yes,
great one. Yes.
I sort of wonder if there's like maybe not as extreme of an example, but maybe if there's like a Shaq Barrett thing happening here, where it's just the combination of getting in a new place, didn't necessarily pan out early in his career, never really seemed to find any level of success in Jacksonville, but. He was good with the Raiders, second half of 24, and then I thought he was really good with the Patriots, winning one-on-one, usually on the left side, really good in their games, really good in their stunt stuff, but also just winning straight up in key situations against tackles. And, that was something I did not have on my bingo card heading into the year.
I thought he was terrible back in the day. So
and he's been a totally different player for a year plus now.
I know. And like you're saying, it's not just like, glue guy plays. It's impactful plays.
Yeah.
And there's moments in the playoffs too and throughout the season where he showed a lot more awareness. Like he found a screen. He blew up a screen against the Broncos where he was the first guy, not the linebackers, not the DBs, to go like, hey, this is a screen. He starts widening out. Plays like that. No, I agree with this. I thought there's so many times too, like a team would run a jet sweep out of his side and he'd punish it. That to me is showing a guy that the game is slowing down, like where he's like, oh, okay, this stuff is starting to click. And like, there's a reason he shouldn't have probably gone high in the first place when he first got
Sure.
drafted, but there was a reason. He has some tools. And now
Yep.
sometimes you give these guys tools and they get enough time for it to slow down. They can kind of like take advantage of that. So I'm glad you brought him up because he's kind of like, there's actually a few edges that kind of like not getting as much hype as I think they should as kind of the middle class of that kind of position group. I know you did a whole deep dive of every tier breaking down. You sicko. But no, I thought Chason was such a good one.
ESPN, we have to test the ESPN player card technology and make sure it works. That's what that column does. It makes sure all the player cards are working.
Just have to pull up. Oh man, who do you have on there? Nick Neiman from the Packers.
He played one stop. He played one stop
and let up a 2-point against the Colson Loveland, right? I did a whole segment on that on the NFL Network. I did a whole breakdown. I was like, poor guy. Only time his name's ever heard. I'm like making sure.
Can you imagine?
This guy's played one snap the entire year. Who do you think they're targeting?
Can you imagine? If you're Nick Neiman, you play special teams all year. Neiman! 2-point play, you're in.
And you got Colson Loveland man-to-man
against Colson Loveland. Like, oh no. I thought
it was just Dolph Ziggler's brother. That's what I thought. They got Dolph Ziggler's brother coming out there to guard Colson Loveland. I knew that'd pop you. No, I love that you brought up Chason because I think it's real. There's not the funny money production like where it's like, oh, this guy got schemed up. It's like, no, this is real. So I think he'll get maybe a little more than people are expecting. But I like you said, I think he can more than live up to that, like as a secondary pass rusher as well, call it like a secondary kind of edge. If you have an ace,
for sure,
wow, you really like where you're at, or have a couple guys. If he's your third best pass rusher, you're cooking. And I'm including like defensive tackles and whatnot.
Yeah.
If he's your second best, okay, that's not a bad spot to be in. And considering what he was a couple of years ago, that's just like tremendous growth, I think, as a player.
For sure. You want to give me another one?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll say on that. John Franco Myers is kind of maybe a little rich, but I do think he's a little underrated because he can impact the run and pass. But I'll give Joseph Asai from the Bengals.
Yeah.
A guy
I thought he played really well this year.
I did too. I'm kind of surprised. I'm curious what he gets because if you watch him, like I thought he was a good starter this year. And again, like a guy that had tools and traits. He has length. He had a couple flash plays over his career. And I thought it was down to down consistency. I thought he plays the run well. I thought he played the pass well. Again, the guy that I think if a team already has some established guys and you drop him in, he could really kind of outplay whatever you give him. So for teams are always trying to find pass rushers. Teams are always trying to find guys that can play up front, and he's not a nothing against the run. So I don't know. He's a guy that I'm kind of surprised. Maybe I haven't seen his name crop up at all, really. And it's like I'm kind of circling and starring a little bit because I think I could see a smart team going after him, and I'm curious what that smart team is, and then watch it's going to be like the Raiders or something like that. Sorry. but I do think he has more to him than I think people are giving him credit for right now.
Yeah, I mean, hasn't turned 26 yet. Handful of sacks, never had that big sack year, but double-digit knockdowns. I think 3 of his 4 years.
Yeah.
In Cincinnati, and he pops up. I mean, like you see him on tape, and he is winning a fair amount. So I think Osai was a guy on my list where I sort of, when I was tiering them, I was like, I wanted to put him higher, and I was just like, am I the only one who sees this? So I do feel happy that you're on the same page with me about Osai.
Yeah. He was the Bengals defense came along in the second half of last year, not good, but they weren't like they were travesty. They went from, it was like the Bears center situation. They went from a historical travesty to okay. Dolphins maybe a little better than that, but it was, they went to, at least it wasn't a travesty where you're going to score 40 points against them no matter what. And I thought Osai like really came along. It was just one of those, I watched more Bengals stuff just 'cause I was just curious what was going on with them. And he was one guy that kind of stood out to me. And the game, he had a big play against the Chiefs in that upset when they beat them to go to the Super Bowl. So that would have been 2021? God, in my brain. And I think so. But ever since then, I've kind of kept tabs on him. Kind of didn't really come along. And also, again, not to be like me and beat down a franchise, but like if you take it, you kind of want to buy these guys from bad franchises that you can maybe get more in a more cohesive kind of unit or cohesive program and put them in. So yeah, besides the guy I'm bullish on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. We talked about Chason as a guy where obviously the Patriots were a good team, but he had spent his entire career on the Jags and the Raiders before that point.
Yes.
Osai being on the Bengals. I'll throw a guy on a very good defense out there, a pass rusher who, like, I feel like I'm leaning younger and guys moving to better situations. This guy played on a good defense. He's older. He, uh, I could not have anticipated in a billion years he would have had this kind of season. Eric Wilson, the
Yeah.
linebacker for the Vikings, where I just
have
look
him
at
on my
Nakobe
list as well.
Dean, and I'm like, Nakobe Dean's going to make a lot of money. I think it's a really good blitzing linebacker, and I think Eric Wilson might be better. He's older, and
Yeah,
I don't think he's ever going to do this again. But Eric Wilson was like a legit Pro Bowl caliber off-ball linebacker last season.
he was. I mean, there's the fact that they kept him on the field. They had other guys that they had played before, and they were like, no, we're going
Yeah,
to keep Wilson out there. So that's, you listen to what teams are telling you. Like you're like, okay, there's a reason you're getting more snaps, and there's a reason you're getting
yes,
this or being used in these kind of, like these defenses aren't going to like just waste blitzes on guys that can't get home. They're going to
he got
dial. It's like,
he was
and he
running over running backs in pass protection all season.
all season. Like that's Nakobe Dean. Like the Cowboys have already floated because who they hired a defense coordinator that they're going to go after
Yep.
Nakobe Dean. And I'm kind of the same thing. I'm like, I'd rather have Wilson than Dean because Wilson was going to be mine. So I have talking points ready. I'd rather have Wilson than Dean because Dean also has injury history. And I get it.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
but this is the classic. I feel like this is like NFL of yesteryear. Well, there's familiarity with the defense. It was like, I'd rather have the guy that's better and you can use him the same way. No, but and be cheaper. So I'm glad he
Yep.
brought him up. I didn't know how to like categorize him, like, because he's kind
Right.
of like a unique player. But a defense that uses unique fronts or unique, like go for it. And that kind of hybrid, we're going to be talking a lot about because of the Ohio State linebackers coming in this class.
Yep.
That kind of hybrid off-ball edge guy is where more defenses are using these guys, and on top of the blitz packages. So he's going to have more homes than I think than maybe of yesteryear, where there's maybe 2 defenses that play that way.
Right.
Right now, you can go a dozen that he could fit in. So no, I'm glad he robbed Wilson. Leo Chanel,
Yeah, six
kind
and
of
a
similar
half.
category, unique
Yeah.
linebacker type.
Yes. Chanel's a better athlete than
Yeah,
Wilson is to me.
Chanel's better.
Especially
Chanel is better. I will say that, but
Yes.
he's more the middle class version, upper middle class version. While I think Wilson's maybe the half step
Right.
back.
Right. Wilson, I mean, 6.5 sacks, 17 tackles for loss last year. And like playing in a defense that's going to get their linebackers in the
Yeah,
backfield,
yeah.
obviously in Minnesota, like that's a dream scenario for him. But like you said, I mean, even if you have teams who are not playing Brian Flores' defense, they're at least watching what Minnesota's doing and they're trying to emulate it in spots. I don't know if they're as successful at doing it, but
Yeah.
I look at a team like the Saints, for example, where
Mhm.
they're loading up the line every third down and they want to force you into one-on-ones. And if you can get Eric Wilson against a running back in pass pro, that's going to be a win. We saw that over and
Absolutely.
over again over the course of 2025.
That's what defenses are doing. They're so smart with this stuff now. They know protection rules so well. And I've kind of gone on a few rants on this, but it's like that's where offenses have to improve more than anything else. Is they have to find new ways to get to their protections and they have to vary them up. I think the Super Bowl is the epitome of it, or like a nice kind of microcosm of it all, where I saw an outdated protection scheme get absolutely abused by a new age defense that's running, I mean, stuff that everyone's run, but just knows when to call the right stuff.
Yep.
And I think more teams should be looking at the Rams and the Bears of the world who have kind of modernized their protection schemes. It's nothing no team has ever done. Like there's nothing new in football. It's just that they know how to add new tweaks with motions. They change up cadences. They change, and they just also change up the protections. They don't run the same 6-man slide, or 6-man half slide every single snap. So, no, I'm glad this is a great one to bring up because think of like Jim Leonard, who's going to run some funk with the Bills. The Broncos have Vance Joseph. He runs some funk. You got the Cardinals with Nick Ross. He runs some funk. You got Chris Shula. And I'm not saying these are landing spots for Wilson. I'm just saying Chris Shula runs some funk with these guys. Like there's more of these defenses that I can point at that could use an Eric Wilson than of yesteryear.
Yep, for sure. You want to give me
man.
another one? We can stick on defense if you want.
Oh, we
move to
can stick
offense.
on defense.
You can go whatever you want.
Al-Qaid Muhammad not getting any love. I know he's older, but also like extremely productive. Like, and it's not cheapies. Like extremely, like a top 10 pass rusher, right? Like
legit stuff last year.
Yeah, I mean, he is just, and it's real. Like, there's not like this isn't again. These aren't cheapies. Am I going to say that he's going to be a top 10 pass rusher every year? But that's significant to me. That's a data point that he can win, and win consistently. So even if you like bring him in to be your secondary pass rusher, as I'll call it, that's awesome. Like, like bring him in and you're not going to have to break the bank. I know, again, age, but you're not
Yeah,
going to sign him for forever. Like,
right.
I think DeMarcus Lawrence is a better overall player with run stuff, but like a deal where it's a 2-year deal, kind of get him on both sides of 30,
Right.
something of that sort. But a winner, like going after Alkane Muhammad, like the Bills, somebody that like
Yep.
Ravens, like some of these teams that just need a little juice, but he doesn't
Yep.
have to be the guy. Like, oh, he
Right.
might have to be with the Bills. Bill, I should stop using Bills as an example because they need so much. So
Yep.
maybe Ravens might be a better example for this this conversation.
Yeah.
The Jags, maybe just that one extra guy to add some more pass rush juice. The guy that can just win those snaps like that. That's where I think he could just kind of surprise some people. So I
Yeah.
want to give him a little shout out.
I'm glad you mentioned the Jags. I do think Muhammad's best role is going to be as a guy who can reduce inside on passing
Yeah.
downs, because we did see
Yep.
him really attack guards, did a really good
He's
job
rugged.
kind of getting around them. Yes, he's not
Yeah.
like, he's not like a Jalen Phillips style edge where it's like you're looking at like, an Olympic sprinter going around the edge.
Bend and finesse. Yeah.
And nothing
Sure
wrong with
looks
that. Jalen
pretty.
Phillips is great. Yeah. But like Muhammad, I think a lot of his success was, as a defensive tackle, basically rushing interior guys,
Yep.
twisting through. And with the Jags, well, you don't need to play on the edge because they have Walker and they
Yep.
have high talent on the edge, so you can go inside on pass downs. It could sort of be like the guy they were hoping Arik Armstead was going to be when they signed him 2 years ago. There's a really useful player there, and I do think like. I feel like Detroit's going to bring it back just because I don't think they're going to make a more significant investment. Like, I want them to sign Trent McDuffie. I don't think they will, but I just feel like Muhammad, even if he's not the guy he was a year ago, you could still be something less than that and still be a pretty useful player.
What was his pressure rate? Probably like 16%, give or take.
It was
somewhere
really
like that.
high.
Yeah.
Really high for a player who, wasn't like he was seeing, it wasn't like anyone had those expectations
But
for him.
say we get a
heading into
10%
2025.
drop off, which I think is very fair.
Yeah.
Okay, that's still above board for a secondary pass rusher. Like what I would consider 14, like no, 12% is kind of like what you want to get to. 10% is like okay, that's a solid pass rusher. 12 is like, okay. So 10% drop off from that, I know I'm just doing monkey math here, but 10% drop off from that, it's like still, if like you're getting 12% pressure rate from him, that is worth signing. Again, not breaking the bank, but just knowing what he is. And there's something to this where, again, winning teams kind of have this advantage. When you sign these guys and they're not the savior, it kind of helps helps everybody out.
Sure.
The expectations of the signing, if that makes sense, because if we get onto offense, like. I don't know what's going to happen with Alec Pierce. It seems like the Colts are hell or high water trying to keep him, but there's transition tag, all that stuff. But it's like if he gets signed for 24 mil, my teams are just going to go, whoa, okay, he's our ace. And it's like, well, Alec Pierce is more like a high end 2. That's like a super role player, as opposed to like an actual ace that you're paying that much money. So yeah, just a longer conversation about expectations.
Right. But there's a legitimacy to that, right? Like I think, it's like a rotation. Like when you get an ace for your baseball rotation, every pitcher goes down. Suddenly that guy who's maybe stretched as an ace, he's a great number 2. The guy who stretches as number 2, he's a number 3. The 4, now the number 3 doesn't have to start in the playoff series. Now he's the 4 and he could be the guy who comes in if someone gets hurt. Like it really does make life so much easier if you have that the Hutchinson that makes everyone else could be, it puts everyone else in a much better spot. Lions, I think, benefited from having that last year. I'm weirdly going on a run of former Packers on the defensive side of the ball.
Okay, I know where you're going with the first one.
Well, I already had Eric Wilson.
Yep. But the other linebacker from Green Bay?
No, not doing another Green. I'm doing a former Packers player.
Oh, former Packer. Okay.
Actually, this is a combination of both the guys I named so far. Former Packer and coming off of a surprising year with the Las Vegas Raiders. That is Eric Stokes, a quarterback.
Eric Stokes. Yes. Oh, I know the other one. Are you going to go Rasul Douglas? There's another one.
I wasn't, but I'm happy to bring it up if you like. That Dolphin secondary, I mean, talk about like just being thrust into the fight at like the last possible
Every
second.
mock, I'm just throwing them a corner because I'm just like, come on, like, and the head coach is a defensive guy that like needs corners and his stuff. It's like, yeah, they're gonna address that spot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Eric Stokes, I thought 77.7 passer rating last year in coverage with the Raiders. Without a great pass rush in a defense that did not have a lot of great help elsewhere, I sort of wonder, like, did playing for Pete Carroll help Eric Stokes sort of figure some things out. And
Oh.
then former first round pick, had a ton of injuries at Green Bay. He was healthy for the majority of last season. Like, if we're thinking about, okay, who can exceed expectations? Who can deliver on what was a pretty solid season at the right price and actually be a player who delivers surplus value? I think betting on a guy like Eric Stokes makes some sense to me.
I know, I totally agree with that. And also Patrick Graham, the perpetually underrated Patrick Graham, who only seems to defensive coordinate terrible teams. And then you look at the after season, you're like, Reeves defense, actually, the metrics are actually pretty good for them every single year.
Yes.
Sorry, but I'm like, it's always just seems like he has a scrap heap to work with, and he like gets something out of it. So it's like it's pretty funny watching him. No, Stokes is a good one. I like that. I think there's some interesting kind of low tier corners or low tier DBs, like James. Graham's made me think of this, but James Pierre from the Steelers last year, when he was on the field, he actually played really well. He actually had some, not only just metrics wise, but just actually even like tape wise, they actually got significantly better when he was on the field. Having JPJ on the other side really helps. But no, I like this one. I think DBs can be fungible as more teams play more zone. And it's not just iso ball on every single guy, and that's where skills and traits matter a little bit more. But guys that have intelligence and enough traits and enough speed to kind of take advantage of that and put in a good scheme, a guy like Stokes is exactly that type of player.
All right.
All
Hit
right, that's
6
just
defensive
defense.
players. Should we move to the offensive side of the ball?
We should. As a couple defensive tackles in there, we're good. I scratched that itch, so thank you, Bill.
Are you going to give me an interior offensive lineman to start?
I can.
Okay.
I definitely can. Isaac Sumalo, who I know he's 32, but like a guy that like I think someone can get a 1 or 2 year deal and get like a good starter when I'm going to see other, offensive linemen are going to get overpaid. It's a market. That's how it goes. But a guy that I think will get more fairly paid, and I know he battled some injuries this past year, but he's 2 years off of a Pro Bowl, and that's not every end all be all. But more, I think actually when he was out there this year, I thought actually played well. And at the age that like I don't think guards are totally fall off a cliff, but I think you can at least get this year and then one more year. But a kind of a cheapie signing that I'm kind of like, I don't know, a team can really maybe find a guy, Jags, another team like that, where you're like, hey, we need a guy for this year, maybe next year, but for sure this year. And you can get that 14, 15 games of above average play. Kind of like how Kevin Zeitler might be a little bit better in this, but how Zeitler became for teams where you get that 1, 2
He was the journeyman guard.
Yeah. And it was like, oh, okay, slot in above average starter, our 81 overall starter on Madden. Like, there we go. We got him right there. But that's kind of how I view Sumalo. Like, not great or anything, but solid. And I think
the only reason I disagree is I think he might get paid.
You do think he gets paid? God, I feel like he's being weirdly underrated nationally. Maybe it's some of it, but he might get paid. I mean, guards are going to get paid. Like I was going to say Jermaine Illuminor, sorry, the right tackle for the Giants. Same kind of category. Past 30, had a good year. Those markets I never know. Like it's like because me, offensive linemen are going to get overpaid, but then teams also freak out when someone hits 30. So it's like it's like I counteracting those. So it's like they can get their range. To me, this is just me. It just seems a lot more varied than I think maybe I maybe come across.
No, you're right, and that is. I wouldn't be shocked if Solomalo got $8 million for 1 year, and at that price, I would love to have that kind of deal. But like, could he get 26 for 2? Would I be shocked? No. Like, I think that's also in the range of possibilities for.
That's actually what I think he would get. Like a 225, something like that, like 12 mil a year, give or take. Yeah, right. I think that's kind of what
I think that's totally fine. Like, especially, it depends on the context of your team. If you are just, we need to be last year's Patriots and we need dudes we trust in spots.
we need a pulse.
Yes. we need a left guard who isn't. We're not going to be covering our eyes when we're sliding away from him in pass pro. Like, that's really valuable.
That helps. I know there's more teams that I think maybe that might be one spot away from all that. Like, I mean, they're not the best example, but like even like the Seahawks, that's right guard. That's a glaring weakness, but they're like one guard away from their offensive line going like, to like, okay, actually pretty good. Don't need just a Kubiak scheme to help. Small is not a great fit for that kind of offense that they're going to run, but like just using that as an example. I still think the Jags should really find 2 interior linemen some way, shape, or form. Because I don't know. I don't know about you, but I'm like, very bullish on the Jags. And I think they're like, if they nail this offseason, they can kind of
Yep.
like really launch themselves. Are we looking at the AFC right now? We're looking at the Chiefs, what they're doing.
Yep.
Looking at the Bills, what they're doing. This conference is wide open. So if you nail this offseason, like you can really go full forward.
Yeah. I mean, would not argue with that in the slightest. I had another guard, and this guy has been bad for most of his career. So I'm like really throwing this one out there as like a Ed Ingram. Okay, Ed Ingram had like one of the blocks of the entire season. He got under Jermaine Pratt and like knocked Jermaine. It wasn't the Genevieve and Cloudy, like
oh yeah,
but
the Michigan game, Michigan hit.
Yeah, but like he decleated Jermaine Pratt with the block, and it was like the highlight of it. Ed Ingram just like kept his head down, like ran with the play. It was like a 12-yard gain. Didn't like freak out, but you could tell under the helmet he was like, yeah.
Just did the little trot a little bit.
He was so excited. He knew we were gonna get to watch that in the film room the next week. This guy is worse than Ed Ingram, or has been worse for most of his career than Ed Ingram. I'm
so excited for this name now. I'm gonna do a spit take. I'm gonna do a spit take.
In deciding a Super Bowl.
Why am I blanking? No.
Spencer Burford.
Okay.
Spencer Burford of the San Francisco 49ers, where he has not been good for the majority of his pro career. But
that's not where I think you're going. This is good.
But Nate, last year he got to play left guard, and they just stuck him at left guard for half a year. And you know what? He was okay. He was playing next to Trent Williams, which is going to help a lot. But when we think about how much young guards get paid in free agency, and Spencer Burford is not going to get a lot, should not get a lot, should get like a 1-year deal for like $2 million. He might be an okay left guard. I would want to see if you could just stick him in one spot, stick him at left guard, and let him play for a stretch of time on a bad team. Maybe you might get lucky.
It's like, I don't know if this metaphor or this analogy works, but you know how there's kind of like a buyer beware if you ever bought a defensive back from the Patriots?
Yes.
Kind of like that with offensive linemen from a Shanahan scheme.
Yes.
That's kind of how I'm always am. It's like, we saw two teams do it last year. The Packers signed, honestly, don't even need to know his name. What's his face? And then, and then Moore, obviously Chiefs signed Moore, which actually was a little bit more decent than I kind of made him out to be.
The
but
price
like
matters,
for me, it does. No, I mean, like you're saying, I just said Sumalo can like get a price that makes sense in my brain. It's like, let's continue the baseball comparisons, like the price of a win, like in football, it's the price of snaps impacted, the price of all that. And okay, if you get a guy that's just average, and offensive line is, and I know this is a popular saying, it's a weak link system. Like if you just get average and he's your 4th or 5th best lineman, you're cooking. But if you sign him to be like, he's our starter and he's our 2nd best lineman and we're paying him, then it's the issue. But no, I'm with you. I know they played the rookie from Iowa, Colby, and they're trying to figure out the left guard spot. So like it did get shored up in the second half of the year. So this is a good shout. I'm right there with you. Like anybody with a pulse is going to get paid.
The price matters. If the price is $5 million, no, thank you, sir. Price is $2 million.
Oh yeah, all day.
Give it a shot.
What's his face? What's his face get paid before he got re-upped? Ben Bredesen. What did he get 2 years ago when the Bucs signed him? Because that's kind of like the perfect kind of like flyer, maybe starting for us. He got re-upped but that's kind of the rate I always think in my head. Like it's like, okay, this guy might be a little bit better for us.
1 year.
$3 million for 1 year. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right on it. It's like, this contract stuff or something. If another guy, Tyler Biotish, I'm surprised he's a free agent. Already visiting Chicago. I was kind of surprised. I've been trying to, I was like one of those where I was trying to reverse engineer like what came to that decision. That one was curious to me. Washington's curious.
I'm really intrigued by what's happening with the Commanders' offense.
I am too. They're making. I don't know. I want to see how it adds up. Before I like get way too ahead of myself, because I don't know. They're making some curious decisions. That's how I'll leave it at.
I'm not sitting here saying it's not going to work, but like David Plow, a lot of like untested people on that staff. They're moving on from Biotish.
I know they have so many. It seems like they have a lot of cooks in the kitchen there as an organization, and I think that's kind of trickling down now. And these are some of the trickle downs. Like I don't know, a starting center like Biotish, who I think is the perfect definition of average center,
Yep.
and can make calls too, which I actually do
Yep.
think is nice. He has experience pointing stuff out. Has played in offenses that have asked him to do that. It's not just a set it and forget it scheme.
Yep.
I don't know. Like, that's not a guy you just like give up like
For nothing.
without for nothing and without a clear answer to replace him. I mean, he's immediately in Chicago. He was in House Hall yesterday, and I was like,
Is Allegretti going to play center for them now, you think?
I don't even know. Wait, because they got rid of Chris Paul too. That must be their thinking. Well, let me see their line.
Because they did bring back Allegretti. They re-signed Andrew Wiley, who's going to play.
Andrew Wiley back.
As their like utility.
Connerly came on the second half of the year. He's better in the run game than pass game. And Tunsil actually played okay last year.
Second half. He was.
I don't know, man. That's some question
half.
marks on the interior of the offensive line for a quarterback that can get a little skittish with interior pressure and a new offensive scheme that might be more under center.
It's just the opposite of what I would have expected. If you were like, okay, year 2 doesn't work out, we're gonna entrench. We're gonna continue to build the offensive line. We're going to make our interior better. We're going to bring in a coach with experience. And instead, they're like, we're gonna go the exact opposite of all that.
And a new O-line coach too. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I just want to see how they stick the landing. Because right in the air, I'm seeing them twist around, and I'm like, ooh. Call the ambulance. But I'll see. I've been surprised before. All right, well, stay in offense. I think there's, I think tight ends is interesting to me, and the fact that I think blocking tight ends are going to have a little bit more of a market than they always do.
Sure.
Continuing. Yeah, I went Kolar. Not a fan, or am a fan?
No.
Oh,
I'm totally on board with this for multiple reasons.
Okay. Because I think he is a guy that can unlock a lot for teams. I think, there's going to be a big talking point as people point at the successful teams of the Rams being 13 personnel. But I think that's just even league wide. And I have to just be like, oh, what's the last thing I saw? Is that teams are figuring out better multi-tight end looks and just how to weaponize that. But people think it's receiving tight ends you need if you want to do that. No, you need a blocking tight end to unlock the receiving tight ends.
Yes.
That's why the Bills get Jackson Haas, unlock Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. If you look at the Rams, Colby Parkinson, who I think is extremely underrated, is unlocking everybody else in that offense, Terrence Ferguson, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, Kolar, who I always butcher his name somehow, he's a guy that is a true inline guy, and I think a good one. That is a solid receiver, but that's not why you're paying him. But if you're a team, they might not be the best example because they just re-upped Quentin Morris, who's to do that role. But like the Jags, you unlock Brenton Strange a little bit.
It's going to push the Jags for every single free agent signing
because they're so interesting to me. The Texans, how about that one? They could unlock and help out Dalton Schultz, who's a feisty blocker, but he's undersized. The Chiefs, again, need to address their blocking tight end position because I think that would unlock. He's a guy that I think for the Chiefs would make a lot of sense. There's a lot of teams that he makes sense for. The Chargers, he makes a lot of sense for. Oh, there's actually the Ravens connection there. I didn't even think about that. But that's another one that would unlock Gadsden and everybody else on their in their pass catching room. So he's a guy that might get a decent contract because if you look at like Josh Oliver and John Bates last year, but I do think that these guys are going to become not a premium, but they're going to get kind of more valued in the open market because teams have realized that this kind of helps unlock your run game and unlocks other stuff that we want to do personnel wise.
I agree. I do think that is an underrated archetype. I think the fact that Jackson Haas fell as late as he did is kind of a really nice bargain for the Bills.
Yeah.
They were able to move away from the 6 offensive lineman stuff to move to more 2 and 3 tight end stuff with Haas. Yes. And I do think he's going to get paid. Like I wouldn't be shocked if he got $7-8 million a year. Yep. And I wouldn't be shocked if he delivered on those expectations. I think he could be a player who, even if he's not catching a ton of passes, could still be really valuable in the right offense. I mean, that's just not a lot of money. That's like, I always bring these guys up and it's unfair to them, but like it's less than Tutu Atwell and De'Ami Brown got last year in free agency.
Less than Alan Lazard got from the Jets.
Yes. 2 years ago.
Yes. And again, I come back to just snaps impacted. Like if you're able to be a player that has a role, like every run play, a guy, like it's a sliding scale of how much a guy is used on a run play. Some tight ends are on the backside of run plays. They're in motion. Some guys are at the point of attack. But if you're on the field for 25, 30 snaps and you're asked to do roles that actually matter to the play, that to me is getting your money's worth.
Yep.
And yeah, like the Eagles are completely empty at tight end, but look at their
Yeah.
run game last year. It's because their tight ends legit couldn't block. Now, can we get into if that's personnel or getting into whether the coaches should have Grant Calcaterra blocking at the point of attack? That is a longer discussion as well. But that's a team that that was hindering their run game as much as the offensive line maybe getting banged up and everything. And Saquon Barkley looking a little bit slower, if I'm being honest, just a little bit slower last year. But no, I think that's a team that can go after this archetype because I think that would help boost their run game in ways that people don't understand or don't realize at first blush.
I'm going to go for the exact opposite kind of tight end. We're building a tight end room on the cheap here on this show. We got Charlie Kohler on the inside. Our move tight end is a guy who I've written off, former second-round pick. Nobody was watching him. Nobody should have been watching him. This team was hopeless. Do you know, Nate, who was second in the NFL in yards per route run amongst tight ends with 100 pass routes run or more during the second half of the 2025 season?
No, I do not. In the tri-state area.
Not in the tri-state. On the eastern seaboard.
Okay.
Number one, actually. Number one was George Kittle. Number two, all the way on the other side of the country, was Miami Dolphins tight end Greg Dulcich.
Yes, he was. They loved him though.
I completely forgot about Greg Dulcich. He was like a scratch on the Giants last year. Yep. I mean, he was basically on his way out, and then his full season to 2.7 yards per route run, second half of the year. You prorate his performance out to a full season, 49 catches for 632 yards. And again, if you are leading into that idea of we're building more 12, 13 personnel teams, and you want to do that on the cheap, Greg Dulcich is probably going to make the minimum or close to the minimum this year in free agency. There might be something here. I mean, it's the guy who was pretty highly regarded heading into the NFL, showed some stuff as a rookie, had injuries, kind of lost his way with all the changes in Denver, never really seemed to find a good fit. But if you're betting on a player who might still have some untapped potential, who we saw in an offense that wasn't working for a lot of people last year in the passing game, look okay, I do think Dulcich might have a little bit to work with there.
And again, if you want to go multi-tight end looks, I talk about like blocking, but you also a defensive, okay, if you're going to lean into that, things can get tight if you don't have team speed. So that's also the thing. It's like no matter what personnel grouping you want to be in, there's a lot of specifics that people wave away, but you need a tight end that can stretch the field. And that's what Dulcich's best attribute is that he can run down the seam and get big and catch the ball. Even at UCLA, he was like that. I know he feels like a fever dream player. Like that Hackett year with him, like that just feels like a lifetime ago. But it's just one of these plays. I was thinking about Mark Clayton the other day, talking about fever dream player. Remember him? He was like 1,000-yard receiver as a rookie, and then OU. Yep.
Receiver?
Actually, a very similar draft class to this year's draft class, that 2005 draft class. That was not a year you wanted a couple. That was like Braylon Edwards. That was Troy Williamson. That draft
top 10 pick.
Boy, do I know, Bill Barnwell, that he was Hey, how do you replace Randy Moss?
Do you remember who the other player in that trade was? I'll give you extra credit if you remember who the other player in that trade was.
Napoleon Harris?
Of course it was Napoleon Harris. Very good.
Jeez, yeah. Hey, that was before my first beer, Bill. I remember all that stuff. No, Napoleon Harris. It was a first rounder. Napoleon Harris and a 7th rounder, if I remember correctly. And then that was we're gonna take Randy's money and say Antoine Winfield.
We're gonna rebuild Randy Moss in the aggregate.
Yeah, but we're gonna use it on defense. We're gonna be balanced. So rather than have a top 5 lock it in offense and a high variance defense, we're gonna be 18th in both in offense and defense. Perfect. Thank you, Red McCombs, as your parting shot because he didn't want to pay a bonus. Sorry, I can get into that too. Want to talk about the 2003 draft when they missed the pick? No, those 02 to 05 Vikings have they've done a lot to me. No, but I getting back to the original conversation, but you have even with the Rams kind of comparisons, that's everyone 13%. Terrence Ferguson can stretch the field, and that's what helps out is that Yeah, they would get into three tight end looks and just run spread formations from them because they can get the defense simple, but you still need guys that can threaten them deep to create the spacing of the play. So like that, if a creative team could use a Dulcich, actually like a Shanahan team could use a
Yeah.
Dulcich, like because I think that, and that's what he was with the Dolphins. Also, I'm also partial to their blocking tight end, Julian Hill, who
Yeah.
I think he's a earned or a restricted free agent or whatever. What's the E?
Exclusive rights.
Exclusive
Free agent.
rights. Um, I think that's what he is this year because he was an undrafted guy. But like he's a guy that I've always kind of kept my eye on. I think there's something to him as just a blocker, gritty guy, a Josh Oliver type down the road kind of thing. But yeah, I just want to give him a shout out because I was like,
We
oh,
should.
are they? I was like, Dolphins? Oh, tight end? Oh, okay, Grant Dulcich. Sorry. I was like, Julian Hill. We're going to talk Julian Hill.
You didn't think I was going Waller?
Yeah. That was Darren Waller's. Is he a free agent? What is Darren Waller's contract situation these days?
I have to imagine. He didn't get a multi-year guarantee when he signed with the Dolphins.
Oh, my God.
Can you want to give me one more offensive player
Sure.
as we finish up here?
Yeah. You know, I do want to just kind of, as a passing glance, I do think Romeo Dobbs is going to get paid, but I do think he is a good player that fits in a lot of offenses. But I would say a guy that I think is going to outplay what he does get paid is Tyler Algier. I've been always kind of partial to Algier, and I get Kenneth Walker and ETN are sexier in this free agency class, but I think Algier can be a guy that surprisingly starts for a team and just also like earns more than he got paid. He's a guy that can he can play every down. He can pass protect. He's solid. He's got good hands. He's not explosive, but he's got good hands as a check down guy. He's already mentioned pass protection. He's good in short yardage. Does not have a career fumble, I believe. But even I was saying all that, he fits in several offenses. Like I know he's run a lot of zone, but it's nice that he has enough speed. He's already shown that he has enough speed to run a zone scheme. He has the vision to run a zone scheme, but he also has the power and balance and everything that he's pretty good in gap schemes as well. So why I'm saying that is that he's scheme versatile and a guy that, again, talking about snaps impacted, like I just think he can be, I'm not going to say like this is exactly, but Michael Turner, where he kind of outplays what he got paid. Michael Turner did get paid in 08, but just kind of like where he's the backup that becomes something more for a team, even if it's a 50-50 split backfield or something like that. I think he can outperform whatever he does get paid. I've always liked Algier. I think he's just a good player. Bajan, obviously you're going to see the backfield to Bajan, like he's incredible.
Right, no question.
But Algier can be a good back for somebody, and I don't know. I think he's going to outplay whatever contract he gets.
I mean, he was a legitimately good player his rookie season.
Yes.
It wasn't like the Falcons were like, oh my God, we have a zero at running back. They just loved Bijan Robinson, which you can understand. And I think, a guy who could very credibly take over the lead role in a rotation this year. Instead of being the 1B, he could be the 1A. I'm going to finish up with another back in the same vein, a guy who I think was the 1B heading into last year and proved himself to be the 1A. And I think looking at the bigger picture makes me think maybe he was always this guy. We were underselling him. That's Kenny Gainwell, where I
love
mean,
Kenny Gainwell.
You look at the numbers for Kenny Gainwell. He was 6th in the NFL in success rate last year, playing for the Steelers, which is not exactly they have a good offensive line, but not exactly the most incredible offensive infrastructure you've ever seen. We know he can catch the ball. He had that incredible catch for a touchdown, but 486 receiving yards, a career high. He was the second read on pretty much every offensive play for the Steelers. It was like, Aaron, get the ball out once or check down on the swing screen to Kenny Gainwell and get 7 or 8 yards. He was a really legitimately useful player and has been for the majority of his career. And I think earlier in his career, it was easy to say, well, he's on the Eagles. Like he's he's like the second or third back.
Yeah.
But like the skills are there. I mean, the production was there last year in Pittsburgh. I'm not saying he's going to get 300 carries, nor should he. But when we're talking about, okay, what can you do at running back if you don't want to draft Jeremiah Love or you don't want to pay for a Kenneth Walker or a Travis Etienne? Like, I think Gainwell's going to fit right in that middle tier. He's going to get less than Javonte Williams got. And I think he could be every bit as good of a player, not as Love, but as maybe some of those other guys in free agency.
Did you know he led all backs in target share last year?
Really?
Yeah. There's 3 running backs that were over 25% target share. It was Kenneth Gainwell, CMC, and Jahmyr Gibbs. and I think Bijan Robinson's fourth after that. So it's guys that deserve the touches. But I think Gainwell, even when he was with the Eagles, like Shane Steichen would dial up plays for him. He would run this little crossing route for him all the time, and it was like successful all the time until the Super Bowl. And then Spags was very well game planned with those DBs that we talked about to tie the whole conversation together. They sawed him off. And I still remember it because I saw the formation. I was like, this is going to Gainwell, and then gets wiped out. I really like Gainwell. I've always liked him, and it was cool to see him more in a featured role. Whether the circumstances were good to see more featured is, I don't know. But still, he earned those touches. Like, he showed that I can take these touches and make them very productive. He's explosive. He can receive the ball. He makes stuff happen. Like, I'm with you. I think he can, in a split backfield and maybe a better offensive infrastructure, like you just said. Yeah, I'm very giddy about that. Like, because I think he could be really, really good. Like, I mean, the ideal world would be like he's paired with, I don't think he should go here because he won't get the touches he deserves, but like with Jonathan Taylor, like they have a perfect synergy and now they work together. But a team that or maybe has someone established that he can come in and be the 40 of the 60-40 split, or the 35 of the 65-35 split, but being with no drop off to those touches. So I'm glad he brought up Gainwell. Like I think he is so productive and also just has a little bit to him as a player. Like, I don't know. I'm glad you brought this up. Also, I think there's 13 running backs that had a target share over 20%, and 2 of them were Steelers.
Wow.
Warren and Gainwell. So, but Aaron Rodgers is coming right back. So I think we know what we're getting. Hopefully those touches go somewhere.
Aaron Rodgers is not in our list of underrated potential free agent signings.
He's not.
Nate, I would assume you will have, unfortunately for you, an Aaron Rodgers discussion in your future during the offseason. You'll talk about a lot more interesting players as well. But where can people see you do that?
Oh, over at Yahoo, the Football 301 podcast. That's the main squeeze. And then got some articles coming out. Got a big board coming out this week, top 50 big board. But yeah, we're doing free agency previews over there and more free agency and draft content to come over at Yahoo. But yeah, Football 301. Check me out there.
Awesome. And you're going to be you're about to do your, I believe, color commentary debut.
Oh, I am. Indoor Football League. Yeah. I'll be in Indiana. I was calling my first game on Pi Day on March 14th. Wow. Pretty excited about it. Me, Jason Fitz, Caroline Fenton. Yeah, I'm excited about that. I know. Just left Indy from the combine, going right back to Indy to call that game. But
better than Indianapolis in February, Nate. Indianapolis in March.
Get the book ended, baby. No, I'm fired up to call those games. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
It's gonna be great. Obviously, Nate is the best. Check out Nate over on Yahoo. We'll be back next week with more Bill Barnwell Show. Thanks so much for listening.